Greetings and salutations, listener. It is I, Eric J. Chucky, joined, as always, by the boy.
Hey.
And this is the Two Nerds Podcast. Today, we are talking about ostensibly half-orcs.
Yeah, basically, ostensibly half-orcs.
I think Boy and I are in agreement that, much like half-elves, half-orcs are sort of unnecessary.
See, this is interesting, because I gave you such shit for not liking half-elves and finding them superfluous and all that, but, like, I do the exact same thing about half-orcs.
Yep.
Like, the exact same thing.
Even worse, actually, because, like, well, worse, quotation marks. If someone came up to me and said, I would like to run a half-elf in your game, I'd be like, that's fine. If someone came up to you, and me, usually, unless they made a big stink about it, and was like, hey, I would like to run a half-orc, we would both go, well, I mean...
That's just an orc, buddy.
Just be an orc. I mean... For those of you who aren't in the know, and if you aren't in the know, it's this, you've turned into the right podcast. We're a font of knowledge. Y'all see our episode about cat and guinea pig names? Wisdom.
It's the best podcast we've ever put
Yeah, I don't know why we're still doing this. We peaked. Orcs in the god-carved Tolkien fantasy, and traditionally Dungeons & Dragons are evil. Unabashedly, unstoppably, in their very blood, carved out by Groomsh, who is totally not Sauron himself, irredeemably evil. They kick puppies, they bite the heads off of babies, they don't pay their taxes and never get caught for it.
Basically, yeah. Now, speaking to someone who neither has read nor gives a fuck about the Silmarillion, from what I understand, the deep Tolkien lore on that is that they're elves. Orcs are just elves, what became overcome by evil. So that's why they're all evil. It's that they were a race of not inherently evil things that got overcame by evil.
Well, that's fine. I mean, like, you know, whatever your pet setting is there, joking, rolking. But I don't know why everybody, and we don't really, but I am stunned that grognards, the old folk of the old ways, still cleave to, now, orcs must be evil. Have you not played that trope out enough? Do you not wish to experiment with anything else? Must we, in our official materials, designate a species of orc, a subspecies, which you can play because of their human blood?
And, like, it feels different than half-elf to me. And I'm thinking about it and wondering why I don't do this with half-elf, but I do it with half-orc. Because elves are also playable.
Well, and that's what cheeses me off about elves, is because they're already right there.
Whereas so you would think you would like half-orc more because orc isn't available. Half-orc is what you have.
Their excuse is stupid.
Orcs are evil.
Why? Because of an author some time ago we were inspired by said so. I see.
Or, no. I just use orcs as another race in fantasy. And half-orc, I use the half-orc stat for orcs because 5th edition orc stats are garbage. They have a terrible stat spread.
They would be great if it weren't for the stuff they obviously put in there to make sure to drill the point home that orcs are evil and stupid and brutish and could never rise to become anything.
Yeah, because aren't they one of the few races that have a negative stat?
Yeah, them and kobolds, I believe.
Yeah, fuck that. That's just so antithetical to the rest of how 5th edition operates.
It really is.
It clearly makes it so that we don't want you to play this.
And it's not like what they get is that much more powerful.
It's not. Exchange. It's certainly not. Like, my absolute high watermark for 5th edition balance classes is the fucking elephant people from Magic the Gathering. If that's a race that you consider balanced enough to put out, Orc does not need a negative stat boost.
Well, or in the same book that Orc came out in, the Yuan-Ti Pureblood.
Yeah, they're just really good.
They have a lot of beneficial shit.
But, so, we're ostensibly talking about half-orcs, but I'm gonna be using the term orc from here on out. If you want my opinion on the actual orc race in 5e D&D, you have it, and then mechanically, it's garbage, so I don't use it.
I would like to, before we move on, like adults, air a petty grievance.
Okay, yes, of course.
Further compounding my issue with the half-orc-orc divide is that they have taken gnolls away from us for the same reason.
Because they're all evil?
Yeah, they're all evil because their god made them evil. Shut up, we said so.
I mean, to be fair, intelligent design for malevolence is a really good excuse.
Sure, it's just new lore. This was not the case previously.
He likes playing gnolls.
I do like gnolls. A lot. Let me be the yin. Anyway, moving on.
So we like I said, I'm going to be using the term orc because, it's the term I use all the other times. So deal with it. I will forget.
Get wrecked, Scrublord.
I will forget. So I'm just not going to try. I'm going to be honest. But what do you like about orcs in D&D? What do you like? What do you like using them for? How do you play them? That sort of thing.
So let me make a distinction here. Rules as writ, half-orcs are 100% hard-coded to be the best barbarians.
God, they really are.
Their entire lore is about how they get madder. They feel emotions stronger than anyone else. And rage is the first and foremost they mention.
They get a stat that makes it so that they live an extra round when they're reduced to 0 hit points.
Yeah. They get the crit thing.
Yeah, savage attacks.
Dice. Yep.
They get menacing. They're just proficient in intimidate.
Now you can play an orc also who's a really great champion fighter because of that extended crit range. You're likely to crit more often, and all is good. But they make the best barbarians, and they do that really well. It fits into the lore we're supplied.
It does.
They are the perfect example of that. And because of that, when you move away from fighter and a barbarian, all of your orcs in any other class feel unique, and I think that's nice. You know, you want to play the wizard orc, you're gonna be interesting. You want to play the druid orc, the rogue orc. This is all cool. You know, you've got a lot of fertile ground to play with there.
You like that they're so archetypal that if you jump outside the lines at all, it immediately becomes interesting.
Yeah. Like you got hooks there.
I can agree with that. I can agree with that pretty wholeheartedly.
Now, that said, that's not how I use orcs in any of my settings. They're a people. They're a tribal, often animist people.
How do I use orcs in previous settings? Not the one we've talked about on the podcast before, but in a game before that, I did a lot with orcs.
We've mentioned Maul in several podcasts previously.
But in my current setting, I don't really have much of a place for orcs.
No, they're around every now and then, like a guard or member of some sort of mercenary faction is often an orc. Which suggests that they're kind of like Dragonborn in an interesting way, and that they're just not...
Well, it's mostly actually because for this joke to fully make sense, I need to tell you and explain to you that the other day he showed me a meme that made me feel very attacked, which was top box is someone disapproving, bottom box is someone approving of the thing. Matthew Mercer, top box was preparing for the session that's later today. Bottom box was spending time and energy mapping out geopolitical and the entire political system of a nation halfway across the world your players will never visit. And that's me. That's who I am as a DM. There are places in my setting where orcs are very numerous. You've just literally never gone
Well,
there.
actually, that's what I was going to conclude that with. Like, in the rest of the world, they might as well be Dragonborn.
Yeah. Whereas Dragonborn are, with some very few exceptions, like that basically everywhere in my setting. Right. For reasons. But Yeah, there are places where orcs are very numerous, but you guys have never been there and are unlikely to go there because the place where orcs are numerous is a place where heavily muscled, very dark of skin, has to be somewhere hot near the equator. That requires a lot of melanin generation. Predator race, because they got fucking tusks. They're carnivores.
Mm-hmm.
They're from the jungle in the southern continent that's lower than the Jahari Empire.
Yeah, and to that extent, I should mention that pretty much since Maul, if not before, we have mixed brown and green orcs at will.
I basically just make them like it's a coloration difference.
Yeah, if you're more jungly, you might be more camouflaged, so
more
you're
green.
a green skin.
Whereas if you're from more of like a savanna or like a prairie area, you're probably browner, more dun colored.
But yeah, I think orcs as tribal animism. I return to animism a lot.
Well, yeah, because it sort of bends in. It turns into the skid of them being the barbarian.
Sure, and it works well with a lot of different varieties of that because you've got Norse. Literally, while I was reading orc lore just now, or half-orc lore, in preparation for this podcast, I was like, oh yeah, you could have some really cool, Viking-style orcs, and it fits in well with their conquer, and I am so mad because Groomsh is my great-great-great-great-grandfather.
I literally, the game with Maul, the part of the orc tribe that Maul originally conquered were essentially just orc Vikings.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
They were orc pirates.
And you could do still cool stuff with Celts and stuff too, just some really grasslands orcs.
Oh yeah,
rolling moor orcs,
bog orcs.
Yeah, bog orcs. That's a little different. I like it though.
Marching out of the bog, covered in woads, screaming naked. Yeah.
That's basically how I feel. I mean, I like. They fit their niche well, and I feel like, we pull back from the always angry, bastard sons of pure evil thing, but they still fit a similar social niche.
Yeah, they fulfill a similar social niche in that the part of what they do is they exist to be the emotionally unbound person, either as a PC or an NPC. If there's a guard and it's like a Dragonborn. Mm-hmm. Because as you probably guessed by now, I almost always think as a DM. If there's a guard and it's a Dragonborn in one of my settings, you're more likely to run across someone who's pragmatic, but ultimately pretty chill.
Yeah, I would agree.
Just not super invested, not amazingly easy to piss off, because they're part dragon. Dragons are, as a rule, composed until it is time to burninate, at which point they don't warn you. They just do it. If a Dragonborn gets pissed off at you, the next thing that happens is you're on fire or you have a sword coming out of you. Whereas orcs are much more brash to me. They are much more the guard who's gonna shit talk back. If you come up and you're fucking with his steez and you're getting in his way, he's absolutely going to square up. He's gonna want to intimidate you, back you down.
It's the difference between messing with a jaded cop and a bouncer who wishes he was a pro wrestler.
Yeah, it's the difference between messing with an old police officer who has a mustache and gray hair versus a 6'3" dude with giant biceps and a tap out t-shirt. One of those two people is going to give you a very different interaction. And they might not, and that's when you're playing against type, and that also works. But it's the first blush, what you expect looking at that person is different.
So,
I often also have orcs usually honestly, thinking about it, orcs are much more likely in the games I've played in that setting so far, to be highly ranking members of the military than Dragonborn are.
Yeah, they are.
Dragonborn usually end up much more in, like, the sergeant area, but, like, once you get higher up the chain, that's much more likely to be orcs. And I don't really know that I know why. That just is probably a pattern that's popped up, because you make me make up a name for an NPC, and now I gotta make up an entire life story for this fucking person in 3 seconds, so...
Something I enjoy about orcs, and every, setting has this, but I find orcs are really interesting in this regard. The all orcs are different, trope, as it were. Same for, all our vampires are different or whatever. Because, like, if you compare the orcs of, for example, the Elder Scrolls with the orcs of Warhammer.
Yeah, it's... Elder Scrolls is a much better model for how we tend to do orcs, actually, thinking about it.
Honestly, I think they're another level up, even, because orcs are pretty frequently mages, and...
Yeah.
And they're very, like, Eastern-inspired in their architecture and their deeds. They're,
and very, like...
steppes people.
Dramatic.
Yes.
But... Yeah, orc is one of those races that doesn't really... It has, in D&D, the one stereotype, but in other fantasy stuff that isn't too married to joking, Tolkien's work, they don't really have a stereotype. If you go to generic fantasy setting X, right, and you go, all right, what's an elf? You're pretty likely to get a similar answer. If you go, what's a dwarf? You're pretty likely to get a similar answer, slightly less than elf. If you go, what's an orc? You'll either get Tolkien's answer, or you are fucking off the edge of the map. You will get an answer. They'll probably look like Tolkien's orcs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they're really interesting across various settings. I think most of the time I like orcs. Like, I'm happy they're there. I don't think I've ever been frustrated with, like, an orc being present. Be they half or full or whatever. Be they pig-nosed or green-skins or,
I like them as a race. They're very versatile, but they have a strong archetype that makes it interesting to utilize them.
And ways to play against that archetype. I played an orc sorcerer at one point who was outcast from his clan because... he was far too pretty, and had sorcery. And they were like, well, you need to go, you terrible magic person.
Orc outcast from his clan for being too pretty is a thing you're pretty...
I've done twice. Once for comedy. The sorcerer was the comedy one.
And once it really fucked him up, and he's got a lot of baggage.
Yeah, he sure does. Yeah, one I did when I was about 15, and the other one I did when I was in my 20s. Go figure.
I don't know that I've ever played one. Half, full, any
not
denomination.
Not even that many as, like, strong NPCs. A couple, but, like, not...
Like, in previous games, a couple. In my current set of games, less, but that's just... I randomly decide races for a lot of things. Yeah. I'll figure out what kind of fits here and just go with it. But, you happen to be in a kingdom with a lot of fucking humans in it. Like, the most concentrated humans.
I believe our last game had a lot more elves.
A lot more elves, a lot more half-elves, a lot more halflings. A lot more halflings.
Yeah, we ran into a few halflings.
Whereas, like, halflings are much, much less populous in this part of the world you're in now.
So, let's say, let's do this a little bit different than we usually do.
Okay,
It's time to play an orc. Make an orc, but the rule is you can't play a barbarian, you can't play a fighter. You're in a party, other people have already decided their characters, you've already got a barbarian and a fighter. What orc do you make?
Ooh, we don't really need much muscle either, so Paladin's not a good call, really.
Not necessary, definitely.
I would want to play someone who is martially inclined, because it doesn't have to be like a full-on barbarian, but I feel like I would almost feel like I'm wasting the half-orc if I don't play someone who is using their stat bonuses and also is using that good lore that's just sitting there waiting to be used, right? So I would probably play either, depending on mostly on the cadence of the campaign, a rogue, which is less likely. They're slightly undertuned.
But I think, honestly, now that you mention it, Orc Rogue really feels good because you get that extra die on critical.
Mm-hmm. And you can do a strength rogue, which is neat.
Mm-hmm. And
you can use the big weapon.
You can supplement some of that weakness with their undying effect.
Yep. And maybe a ranger, although that's iffier. Again,
that'd be kind of cool if you really like play into the stereotype. Speaking of hyenas, you could have like an animal companion that's a hyena.
You have like a cool animal companion.
Yeah.
You could use like a strength weapon.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Be like the ranger who is more Aragorn, less Legolas.
Yes.
Or like, and this one's probably the iffiest of the three, but like a melee rogue, or excuse me, a melee warlock, like a hexblade or something.
Okay, I can see hexblade.
Just like someone, an orc who, if I was doing a hexblade or something like that, because don't hexblade use their charisma for their attack stat anyway?
I don't know.
Yeah,
seems likely. But
I would look into the mechanics, but my instinct is to play an orc who was just greedy growing up, like never filled out.
Sure.
And lagged behind and wasn't able to keep up, so he found a way to keep up.
A reedy orc, maybe make him a little short. Everyone called him Goblin when he was younger.
Yeah.
He really hates it. Don't call me Goblin. Someone calls him Goblin, stabs him, crits. Get all that damage.
Yep. But, and I like the Hexblade set, anyway. Warlock, that one's the iffiest one because it would have to be a very specific kind of campaign. Because Warlock only shines in a campaign where you have a lot of combat taking place over the same day.
Yeah, I've learned that one the hard way. I've tried to play a couple of Warlocks and...
Like, as a DM, I don't do enough combat to let Warlock really shine.
Well,
because there's not enough short rests.
We also, yeah, like, we don't tend to trudge on or be in a situation where we need to as a party. It's usually a big run and done.
It's not the tropes that I'm good at or fond of as a DM. So it doesn't really work. I would play a Warlock in a campaign where I know it's going to be like when combat happens, it's going to be many combats over the course of a day instead of one big fight. Mm-hmm. Because in one big fight, a Warlock gets, if that's what keeps happening, a Warlock gets underwhelming real fast. But otherwise, yeah, I like the idea of just I see him like tall, actually, not short, but like tall and gangly, just never filled out, just never got buffed like a proper orc, and just found a way to keep up.
Nice.
By hook or by crook.
Sounds good.
You've played several orcs, so I don't know that I can easily reverse the question for you. But you know what? We'll reverse the question the other way. You are going to be DMing a game.
Yeah.
One of your players has decided they want to play an orc, and they're very invested in knowing what orc's place is in your setting. What is it?
Well, honestly, until 23 minutes ago, they didn't have one. I don't have any orcs in my setting. We haven't run into any. No one's playing one.
That's true.
My current campaign setting, but there is a continent we have not yet explored. And I was thinking that orcs would actually fit in really nicely there, just based on the very warlike presence there.
Orcs are also really, really populous in the Sethi Isles, but y'all are never going there.
Someday, maybe. But this continent's really inspired a lot by Northrend from World of Warcraft. So it's cold, it's inhospitable.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, so they're very very Viking orcs.
Orcs very much as the Norse barbarian.
Yeah. So we'd play starting from there. Like, otherwise they're pretty much orcs.
As described previously on this here podcast.
Just orc is a orc. You can dress it up real fancy, but at the end of the day, they mad.
And happy.
And happy. Unless they're
sad.
Maul, in which case he's
And
just...
sad.
Yes, sad.
But, like, I like the idea of orcs being emotional people.
You know...
Like, an orc is never just having a bad day.
Yeah, and in that sense, we've talked about recently about barbarians that function off of stuff other than rage.
Fluff-wise,
yeah. Obviously, they use the same mechanics, but like in another game, one of my players is playing a barbarian that is not mad. They go to their dark place, and they're bolstered by the spirits of their crew. They're playing the barbarian of ancestor spirits or something like that.
Yep, the ancestral guardian, I believe is the name.
So it's not so much that, they enter a rage as ghosts help now. You and I kind of half played at the same time. They were sort of an NPC character. A barbarian who went to the dark place.
Basically think Bucky. Both in that he's a soft-spoken, generally peaceful guy who'd rather not get into any fights. And then when it's time to fight, the Winter Soldier shows up and fucks you. It's not, it was a zealot barbarian. It's not anger. It's just resolute.
Yes. And then I've got this idea, I believe I mentioned before on the podcast about a plague doctor barbarian. Who I think was also going to be zealot, just from the necrotic damage. But it's less rage and more like a delighted, almost manic frenzy. Like, wonderful, let us engage in battle. And then, he just kind of goes nuts with syringes or whatever. What about a sad barbarian? Like, let's say Maul was actually in D&D. He just deep sad boy energy. Yeah. Just, uh-oh, battle's here. Time to think about my dead loved ones.
Like the fucking Johnny Cash music starts tuning up. The man comes to town.
It's not so much that he gets stronger, it's that everyone else can't handle how sad he is.
Basically, when the man comes around.
Yeah. Fun little aside there. Well, same question for you. I know you say there are orcs in various places, but let's say I came to you. Mm-hmm. Let's say instead of my brilliant idea for a character for your next D&D campaign, I wanted to play an orc.
Okay.
What would you advise? What would be your advice for orc playing?
I would ask what kind of person you want the orc to be, because that'll actually help. Because there's a couple different places where they're from, where they're found in like concentrations. One of them is, like I said, in southern jungles and like plains to like the desert area that is a lot of the Jahari Empire. The other is over in the island empire of Seth, where it is Monster Hunter.
Yes.
So if you want to play Waka,
Polynesian Monster Hunter specifically.
If you want to play Waka, that's where you go to get a Waka.
Or you could do what's his name, Maui.
Yes, Maui. Maui would be an amazing character.
Or any number of Jason's Momoa.
Or Dwayne's The Rock Johnson.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would all work. That would all work from there. The other one is, I added, I think it was 15 minutes ago, they're a thing now because I love them, which is bog orcs.
Fuck it.
And they're from the Drowned Isles, so if you want to play like...
I love the fucking
like
Drowned
the
Isles.
much closer to Tolkien orc, like the sallow-skinned, kind of wet, drippy, we ain't had no meat for 3 stinking days. That orc, Drowned Isles.
Now there's a Circle of Spores druid for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's half-orcs.
Sure, definitely. That's what that was.
They're delightful. I think they're a good, solid race. Honestly, I feel like that's my final thoughts on most of this. Is what a good race, except for the Half-Elf podcast.
Yeah, you never really came around.
No. I'm still playing one. I'm still cool with them, but gosh, it's for the stats.
for the stats. But half-orc orc, I don't know what my final thoughts on them are. I don't know that I have any, really.
I think you'd need to play one, really.
Yeah, that's the thing is I've never played one.
Yeah.
And so a lot of my feelings on them are very abstract from a DMing perspective. There's no personal buy-in there.
It's fun to be an
orc. I never
orc.
played a Dragonborn either, and I really love them.
It's fun to be in an orc's skin. It's fun to be the big man. And very sure in your bigness. I do want to say supplemental here for those of you who made it all the way through the podcast. If you have, thank you very much. Feel free to like and subscribe and share and
don't touch
become an abortion.
What the fuck? What the no? Oh no! I got it. I got it, and you motherfucker! That was the most ridiculous, deep nerd fucking Bell reference that I have ever heard in my life, and I'm going to congratulate and shame you for that henceforth.
By all means, ring your bell of shame. The last podcast of the Core Player's Handbook races will be coming within the next month, depending on a couple of things.
Oh yeah, because we only have the one left.
We just have Tiefling. And we've been pretty excited to get to it in that I keep thinking it's the next podcast for like the last 6 podcasts.
It's happened like 4 times now. No meme, no exaggeration. At least the last 4 times we've both gone Tiefling, right? And then looked and gone, oh wait, no.
So, we'd like to hear from you. And if you don't say anything, we'll just figure it out on our own, as usual. But if you have any preference, if we move on to races from other books, or if you'd like to see us cover classes.
If we move on to races for other books, expect a lot of this to get real hypothetical.
Sure. And we might have to jumble a couple of races together. Spoiler alert, we probably will not be doing a podcast on orcs.
No.
We've done it. Here it is.
I might do a podcast on Tritons. Because I love them.
You could do a podcast on Tritons on your own.
I love them.
But yeah, let us know what you think, what you'd rather hear about. We're nerds who love D&D and 5th edition especially. We could talk for... Well, we have talked for literal hours about the subject if you would look at our backlog.
And we intend to do so much, much more.
Yes. Why do we intend to do that? Pause.
Because everything's better when nerds talk about it.